Hello, everybody, and welcome to Flame On's Rainbow Spotlight is what we're calling this little series of live stream videos and audio eventually reaching your ears. I'm Brian. I am here today with BJ.
Mr. Bitchcraft. I was for some reason that whole scene with Katya and Trixie popped in my head.
Well, all right then. So we are here today specifically kind of off our normal schedule to talk about a new documentary new documentary movie that has just been released that we had the privilege to see a little early. It is called Queer Japan, and it was quite a journey, quite a lot of learning about the culture through the eyes of Japanese culture, through the eyes of queer Japanese people. And that's what I will say right off the bat. What I love about this documentary is it's unadorned, straightforward, hear their stories told by them. No narration, no overarching kind of obvious, like, you need to care about this. I mean, very non-manipulative.
Well, and when it comes to documentaries about people, I appreciate it when there isn't somebody narrating, because something happens in my head where I detach from them, where I have somebody kind of talking about them like they're a science project, versus like those people getting to actually tell their stories, as opposed to somebody introducing them.
So and I know what you're saying, and anytime you have like that othering, which is kind of a version of that bad form of othering that we do, where it's like so and so, blah blah blah. But it's so you don't get that personal connection, right? But this documentary has lots and lots of great stories. We are not going to try to tell their stories here. However, we have permission, and we will be showing a few clips from the documentary, and we are going to talk a lot about just aspects of the documentary that we've researched afterwards, some of my personal reflections having been to one of the areas that they talked about in this documentary. And we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about this. And if, of course, we have anyone watching, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you've been to Japan, if you've been to any of the queer spaces there in the country, what are your experiences? We'd love to hear from you while we're doing this. So I figured we'd start off with just one clip just to give you a flavor for one of the stories. And this is a clip of this drag queen named Margaret. And Margaret's got kind of a neat little story. And I won't say a lot more. I'll just set the clip up. Is basically she's going to introduce herself, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So as long as everything's working here, I think we're going to be good. You never know, right? All right, here we go.
名前はドラッグネームの方がいいのじゃあマーガレット男ですでセクシャリティは、ホモセクシュアル自分では意図してマーガレットというキャラクターを演じようと思ったことはなくってもう適当につけた名前でそのうちにペルソナって周りが作ってくるもんだからさで周りから求められるようなアティテュードをしていくうちに今のこういうスタイルが出来上がったって感じかしらね。
So we'll stop there because what I love about her story is it's a little bit about her and her journey in drag, and then it goes into this thing called Department H. And BJ, as soon as I saw this, you're the first person to pop into my mind as someone who might enjoy what they do.
Am.
Yeah. So why don't you talk about what you thought about Margaret and Department H?
So I have to kind of begin this with I was talking to Brian about this before we actually kicked off. Is that I went into this being completely ignorant to most of Japanese culture because I try not to assume that anime is a fair representation. I've been told certain anime and certain pieces of pop culture actually do have decent representation of what life is like in Japan. Persona 5, for anybody that's played that game. I do have a friend in Japan that was very much like, oh yeah, no, that's right on point. So when I got to Department H, I was like kind of floored, because in my head I don't think about really other countries having like a big sort of kink scene, or like a place like that at all. So it was very interesting watching. They had the puppies out for pup play. They had a lot of the rubber community was out there, and I was like, what is, like, in my head I'm like, wait, I want to go there.
So what is cool about Japanese queer culture is it is very diverse.
Yeah.
I'm most familiar with the bear aspect, because that's actually I'm wearing, I don't see if you can see it, I'm wearing the shirt from the eagle in Nichome, which is a small little district. Chome is like district in Shinjuku, part of Japan, a little western out of Tokyo. It's into the bigger Tokyo, but it's a little bit west. Anyway, so I knew the bear scene, but Department H had never crossed my radar, and it's like a special event at a bar. So they'll have bars that are this or that, but then they'll have special events, just like we do here. I mean, it's nothing fancy, right?
Yeah.
They call them parties. Some of the parties in the documentary that they featured are women only or men only parties.
Yep.
Some, and this is a relatively, I think, more recent addition, is like trans men parties or trans women parties. Mostly, I think, that on the trans men parties, but I think they now have both. So like they have these theme parties, and they're not meant to be like negative. Like they're just meant to be a special space for those individuals, right?
Yeah.
Which there's a controversy we'll talk about with Gold Bar in a second. But the Department H is this event that's been going on for years now, and Margaret's the host, and it's a kink night that's meant to allow people to come, whatever that kink is. And the one they feature in this documentary is like latex, rubber.
Yeah, there's a lot of latex rubber play. There was
animal. So not just pup play.
Yeah. No, it was pet play.
What did you think of the giant pig? Oh my gosh. So I don't want to play that clip. I think it's better to tease it. This artist whose name Saeborg, she's a rubber artist, rubber or latex. I don't know that they specified, but it seems it's probably latex actually. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
She made this giant pig latex creature, and it's on a stage, and there are people in their own little piglet latex outfits, and we're not saying like their skin, some of them are skin tight, but the ones she did are actually like balloons, like
a
pig,
the shape, like the actual shape.
And this mother pig births these people in these piglet outfits, and it is a spectacle. I really, really, really wish I had known about Department H and had gone while I was in Japan. I don't know if I would have caught that night. Though the timing of when they made the documentary, it's actually not too far off when I was there.
Yeah, when you were already there.
But anyway, amazing, and I heartily encourage you, if you're thinking this documentary is just all like, oh, this is my partner or my boyfriend or girl. No, they cover quite a wide swath and
everything. Like the guy listing his fetishes at an event, and I was like, okay.
I was a little, because up till that point, I think it's been fairly like all ages, so to speak. Mm-hmm. They got to that moment, and this is just a random person who I think they happened upon at this event.
Yeah, they're like interviewed.
They're like the elevator doorman or something. They're like hanging out there. A lot of times, some of these events, the way the buildings are structured, you come down the elevator and then you open it up, and you're in the event. So I got the impression that's how that was set up. So he was kind of the bouncer-y type. Anyway, he just starts listing all his stuff. Oh, actually, wait. So no, I'm combining two things. So there was that guy, but then there was the guy at the Pride Parade. I think that's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
the one who was just.
Yeah, he was just one after another, and I was, and what's funny is because I've never been there, and just from what I know of the culture baseline, that's a big, like, for somebody to just go on television or be interviewed and be like, I like these weird sexual things, you know, and same for the Thousand Faces. We'll get to that at some point, but it it floored me how similar it is to kind of here, but I definitely know it's they have a really weird history, but yeah, no, it definitely blew my mind.
There's a gentleman they interviewed, Tetsuro Unitsuka, and he is the founder of DISTA. DISTA is an organization that does queer youth outreach. A lot of it to prevent HIV, but just, in general.
Yeah.
In Osaka. And he talked about some of the Japanese history and how sexuality and gender in Japan in the Edo period and potentially before was a little more fluid and a little less, they weren't concerned about labels.
Yeah.
The Edo period is pretty much right when Christianity shows up.
Yeah,
they got Dutch missionaries involved, and then other countries, Portuguese, I think, maybe I think actually a little bit both, but yeah, Portuguese missionary. Anyway, they show up, and even though Japan is still got some great native Shinto, and then they have Buddhism that they've imported from China and wherever, like there's still a lot of Christianity there.
Oh yeah,
and so I think in that time period things start to become a little more binary. And a lot more heterosexual,
a lot more shameful,
and he also talked. I think this was him. He talked about this like hard shell in the West. So we have this like when we're out in our culture, there's the discrimination and the sort of judgment is in your face. The harassment, it's straight up and out. It's outgoing. It's very. Yeah. In Japan, and this gets to some of my own experiences I'll talk about with one bartender I met, it's a lot more subtle. So this gentleman, DJ Stutz, I'll make sure I get his name right. He's a bear. He was the bartender at the Blue Eagle, which is, there's two eagles in Tokyo in Nichome. They're really close to, you can like stumble from one to the other. The main eagle, which is where the shirt I think is from, although they're same owners, whatever, is just like a normal bar. Very typical, like if you're from the West and you experience like a little bar, that's what it is. The Blue is this like dance club bar, and that's unusual. There's not as many of those as other types of bars. That actually snack bars even. That's a whole thing. But yeah, so this bartender is just telling me, and he's Brazilian, and he's an ex-Brazilian. He lives there half the year, and he was just sitting there, and we were just talking, and he was telling me this like horrible just stories that he's had of his life being a gay man and a foreigner in Japan, and like how dating is just really messed up. How they don't. A lot of people are into hookups. Like a lot of even like whether they're gay or not, they're fine with hookups. But they don't want to go beyond that because then it sort of like highlights that they have a partner that's of the same sex. You know what I mean?
You're just. I was gonna say you're describing a lot of things in America right now.
Well, okay, so that's all true, but here's the difference. And you know what? It's more similar to what we have or what you have, but I used to have in the South. Japan is like the South. They're fine to your face, but behind the scenes they're like talking shit. Bless your heart, but you'll never work here.
The devil got in his hands.
That's what happens in this sort of soft culture where it's indirect. They will be very nice to you. And I say they. I'm not like, this isn't like everybody. This is just people who are a little more intolerant. That's the they here.
Yeah.
But they won't hire you. If they know you're gay, they won't bring you into their circles. They won't. There'll be subtle but noticeable slights, And it sounds like, oh, who cares, whatever, because we're very like, whatever, we can be rugged individualists and whatever. But in Japan, it actually makes a lot of difference if you're close with your family, if you're well liked in your community. I mean, all of this is hugely important for you in a practical sense. So what I like that this documentary does, kind of dialing it way back to the documentary here, it actually explored that, and it talked about what it was like for this one person who I'm gonna show another clip here, who's a politician now.
Oh yeah.
And she came out, Aya Kamikawa.
Kamikawa.
Got my K's stuck in my teeth. Aya Kamikawa, she is a legislator in the Tokyo Metro Assembly, which is like the Tokyo like city council, basically. And she's a trans woman, and she was not out. At the time she decided she wanted to run. I think some people knew, obviously, but she didn't like make it a point. And to get notoriety, because she was just so sick of this discrimination she was suffering, she very vocally like came out and made a thing. So I want to show a little bit of her story here, and then we can talk about that her stuff some more.
上川彩、東京世田谷区の区議会議員です。政治家になりたいっていう言葉があんまりピンとくるものではなくて、2003年の4月に全国の統一地方議会選挙があって、私が選挙に出るって決めたのはその2ヶ月ちょっと前の時なんですね。ただ生きづらさを抱えている一人の市民でした。30歳から4年間女性として東京に暮らしてたんですね。私男性として生まれていたので、日本では社会制度上の性別、特に一番大元にあるのは戸籍なんだけど、その性別が変えられないことにとても困っている市民の一人だったんですね。結局性別が書類の上で変わらないと、家を借りるときに住民票を出して賃貸契約できない、役所が発行する健康保険証を出して医者にかかれない、年金手帳を出して正社員になれない。まあ今政治家やってるけど、選挙に行くと替え玉投票を疑われるんですね。
So, this is relevant to to any queer person in Japan, but now more especially anyone who's transgender. Japan has only a fairly recent history as far as any recognition of anything.
Yeah.
But even still, they don't have gay marriage. They only have local sort of domestic partnership-y type registries. If you're transgender, only in the last, I think she said like 4 or 5 years ago, basically when she became a politician, she became a legislator, they had this policy where they're like, oh yeah, you can change your gender marker, but here's the thing. You have to be what is it? You have to I have notes.
You can't be married.
Yep.
You can't have children under 20.
Yep.
And you have like forced sterilization.
So they're basically saying you have to have top and bottom surgery to get that status change.
Yep.
And anyone who has any transgender friends in their life, whether you know it or not, I guess, but especially if you do, those aren't all reasonable conditions, and the last one particularly.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of the civil rights, or not civil rights, but human rights groups actually denounce this policy as a forced sterilization, and so it's controversial even still. But what she's talking about there again is sort of true in certain respects to anyone who's queer. The way Japan's system is built, just from long ago, family registries, the pension book, all of these things. There's a lot of places in the society that if they don't want you there because you're different, you're hentai or you're hen or whatever, like they don't have to make it easy for you. In fact, they can make it impossible.
Yeah, or not even just making it impossible, but just to do that, to go through that entire process, that's traumatic. like you are effectively you have to choose between feeling comfortable in your own body and being the person you feel like you were meant to be, or and then going through all of these pretty terrible rules and regulations to do it, and or just kind of being stuck in effectively a body that you don't feel comfortable in, that you don't feel like you exist in it.
And so it's a lot of pain and a lot of struggle that these individuals have to go through, and this documentary does feature like several trans men and women talking about the struggle and the challenges, but also some of the fun. So I don't want to make it sound like this documentary, Queer Japan, is all gloom and doom. Not at all. In fact, I don't want to go through the well too many times and show too many videos, because I do want you guys to go see this. But there are a couple other stories we might touch on before we wrap. That kind of shows some of the fun and the highlight sort of the journey that they're on. One of the guys, Atsushi Matsuda, who actually the documentary kind of starts with a drag queen, Vivienne Sato, which I know you loved particularly.
Oh, right? Yeah, I like Vivienne.
And then Matsuda, who is a Buto dancer. More lately, that's sort of the way he fell in as far as expressing himself. Previously being a drag queen himself, also Cherry Vanilla, I believe.
Yep.
But he talks about just the way different parts of Japan act as far as how accepting they are. Obviously, the bigger cities like Osaka, Kyoto, Tokyo, even the island community of not community, but the island of Okinawa, I was surprised to find out is actually very accepting. It has quite So getting to hear his perspective on the different parts of it, and seeing how he has found a place for himself in the dance world, as a Buto artist, in the what's the Dai Rakudakan, I believe. I'm probably totally butchering that, but it's a lot of letters.
Dai Rakudakan.
As a dancer in that troupe, which that alone is I could watch that for hours. It's a very interesting style of dance. It's relatively recent, I guess. It came out in the like the 60s or late 50s as a way to bring back sort of ethnic Japanese culture after basically having Japan rolled over by the United States and westernized very quickly. So there's lots of joy in this too. There's lots of great moments, some wacky characters. What's the sheep lady, the sheep
the sheep person,
Nogi Sumiko.
I loved Nogi. Nogi was great.
I think I would get along well with her and her odd sensibilities. She's a maker. She does a lot of hands-on work with crafting outfits. I didn't realize, and the documentary didn't make this abundantly clear, but I looked it up, and she is responsible for what I would call a boob scarf. It's like this wrap that has these like boobs on the end, and she did it as like a statement, kind of like an art piece. She wasn't trying to make like a zany like consumer product, but it turned into this whole phenomenon for her, and I guess I'm guessing other people who copied it. So that was really cool. But then her sheep outfit, and I mean, she didn't really explain it. She kind of just said, I've had this thing about sheep and how, it seemed almost like that black sheep, don't go with the flock kind of idea. But she likes it. She just walks around in it, makes dinner in it,
and what's funny is I believe it's the creator of Beastars has a similar kind of personality quirk. She's always has a chicken suit head that she made herself, and like I don't think anybody actually knows what she really looks like, because she only does interviews in that. She only goes out in public in that, and it was people, and it was funny how she's famous and she has this personality quirk. So then to see somebody who may not be the same as her have that same sort of quirk, but not be on the same receiving end of that sort of fame, was good to see because I just know I loved hearing Nogi's voice. Because and that was the thing. That was one of the things is that there are these kind of wonderful moments within it where you get to kind of see them. A couple of them are sitting there having tea or eating dinner, and they're talking about all the stuff in the world that we're talking about because since this was recently done. So it's just, I loved it when Nogi was walking around town in the suit, kind of just hanging out with people, and that was like. That was great.
She did it as kind of performance art and, interacted with kids in kind of a playful way. So, she's one of those visual artists that's not just trying to shock people. She's just trying to just get genuine reactions, whatever those are, and then she feeds off of it, which I also appreciate. Another one, and, again, you need to watch the documentary for this, but that's very important to our world, being kind of in that geek comic book kind of culture.
Oh, yeah.
Gengoroh Tagame, who even if you don't know his name, you've probably seen his stuff. Either his works that are of the erotic nature, such as would have been published in like G-Men, or My Brother's Boyfriend. Which do you have? Oh, you have Massive there.
I do have Massive, which he had. I believe he had a.
Yeah. He's featured pretty much in that.
He's featured in Massive, and I do have I have both volumes of my brother's husband.
Oh, brother's husband.
My brother's husband, and that was made into a live action television show there.
I have not seen it, but I did hear that. I've read volume 1. I actually need to get volume 2. But I didn't connect that. When I was watching a documentary, I knew of Gingoro's erotica. Obviously, I mean, he isn't. I don't know if he's attributed as the first bar artist, but he's definitely one of the most widely known. Right?
Yeah, he's one of the most widely known.
And I just didn't realize that he was also responsible for My Brother's Husband, which I was introduced to, I think, because of somebody on I think it was like Glenn Weldon on Pop Culture Happy Hour, and was talking about. My brother, and out of nowhere, and I was just like, oh, it sounds interesting. And I just didn't make the connection. Anyway, which is totally not erotica. I think someone said at worst it's PG.
I believe, actually, I was going to say, I think that was, that may have been our friend Lauren who said that, who was like, he's like, this is PG,
was he disappointed?
he sounded a little disappointed. The funniest thing, though, to me was the fact that he does talk about My Brother's Husband and how it's not an erotic. It's like one of his only non-erotic pieces, and it was interesting to see. I'm super bummed. I had no idea he did the convention circuit.
Yeah, in fact, I was having a conversation before this. Turns out, friends of the show, 2 of my previous interview guests on this series, Justin Hall and Andy Mangles, both were with him in New York at that event that they showcased where they were drawing. He was drawing people. I don't know if you also noticed. So Andy Mangles was the one who was like very like Zangief facial hair. I think he even had the Japanese the underwear, which I can never remember the name of. But yeah, that's Andy.
Fundoshi.
Thank you, Fundoshi. That's Andy. And I texted him and I was like, "Did you know that you're in this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, they." Anyway, and then I text Justin Hall, who Andy and Justin both are queer comics legends. If you've not heard of them, I will definitely say go back a couple in these YouTube or Facebook videos. Find the interviews. They're great interviews. I really enjoyed talking to both of them. But
yeah, they're all on our YouTube page, right?
They're all on the YouTube channel. They're all on Facebook as well. And you can find them. Anyway, point is, Justin said, confirmed, because I said, that looks like Sasha Velour. And yes, Sasha was there as one of the models. And you catch a glimpse of her in the documentary, and I'm just like, is that? And so, yeah, and then Justin was there too. So it's a really small world. I'm bummed that I missed that, because that was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. In New York, is possibly during Comic-Con. I don't.
One of them, I think it did a quick flash of a handful of the conventions he went to, and I think one of them was New York Comic-Con.
Like, I I have to have been there. I don't. Anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter. But it was really cool. And so Gengoroh, he is an interesting figure. He talks about his sexuality and sort of the angle on that, which is a great interview. I also love that he introduces Hiroshi Hasegawa, who was the editor and founder of G-Men with him, with Gingoro. And I guess this other magazine that predated G-Men called Body, B-A-D-I. So G-Men is more of the bara, the men, the husky, hairy male figure. And Body is a little more the smoother, pretty boy, twink style, which, in anime is everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's the Bishonen sort of,
yes,
like lots of legs and fit and like smooth, beautiful skin and all the twinkles and shinies.
And yeah, the Bishonen stuff. I mean, a lot of women love it. A lot of women create it. It's kind of an interesting, still queer, but like queer and from a weird like prism, very pretty. But yeah, so G-Men is really cool, and Hiroshi is like quite an interesting gentleman himself. He talks about coming out and realizing like kind of living his gay life once he realized he had HIV. That's another thing this documentary does a great job exploring. It talks about how HIV, didn't hit Japan right away, but it really like took it hard at one point because a lot of people just didn't talk about their sexuality. They would just hook up. They weren't using condoms because it wasn't a thing they realized that they needed to do, and it spread pretty rapidly in the communities there. And I still get the impression that even though it's a little more normalized and people understand what it is and they wear condoms, I get the impression it's still pretty much a stigma. Again, figuring into the way Japan can kind of ostracize you if you're not quite in the spirit. But yeah, so Hiroshi's story is really interesting. I did find out Body and G-Men are both no longer publishing.
Yeah, I actually remember when G-Men stopped, and I don't even know who I was talking to. I believe it may have been my friend Bailey or his husband Hadrian, but like we were mega fans of G-Men. Like every time, like if he could purchase it from somewhere, he would, and he'd always tell me like they got more issues over here because we're perverts, But yeah, no, I remember when it hit the internet that the last issue was coming out. It was a couple years ago. It wasn't super long ago either.
Yeah, it was within the last couple of years that both stopped publishing. Now, Massive, which you held up a minute ago from Fantagraphics, what I found fascinating and very odd, but it kind of makes sense. Look at who the translator and the does it give you the credits on the top of who put that book together?
It doesn't. It gives all the artist names.
Okay, so I'll tell you. So the director of this movie, Graham Colbins, is also the translator of that book, and the co-producer of this documentary, Anne Ishii, is, I believe, the editor of that book. So I believe, this came out. Massive came out a little bit before this documentary. Like a few years ago, right?
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, they did that project and got to know Gingoro and some of the other artists involved. And then I think, we could have had a chance to interview the director, and unfortunately he wasn't available for this time slot that we have. But he's got to have some interesting stories and sort of his own perspective and sort of the evolution from producing that kind of book and whatever he did prior into then making this documentary.
He's done. There's an. I know he was the. Oh no, I'm thinking of the cinematographer. The cinematographer that did this series, Graham Colbin.
That's Graham Colbin. So he's the director and co-cinematographer.
Oh, okay, all right. Because he the only other things I've seen him do is he did another documentary called Rad Queers. And I guess. One is about somebody itty fake, and the other one is Peosos LA.
Okay.
So
I mean, I have
he's
to
got
ask,
a history.
I'll have to ask and reach out. Maybe we can get him on a future interview once the stuff dies down about this, because this is like, it is being launched today. It was a Kickstarter project, so I remember when it had popped up as a Kickstarter project, and I thought I might have backed it, but I guess I didn't. Sometimes I want to back something and I get distracted. But either way, it is being released on all the video streaming platforms today. We watched it on Vimeo, but by all means, if you go to queerjapan.com, should be able to find it. It's got great music. This artist, Geotic, who I'm not familiar with, very unobtrusive, but also very like nice background, sort of ambient electronic vibe. I think they also brought in some other licensed music that they got that's from Japan.
Yeah.
The directorial style, I'm not gonna like pick apart Graham's editorial and directing choices. I will say that I do again appreciate the straightforward, unadorned. There are some shots that are pretty cool looking. The documentary starts at the Shibuya crossing, which everybody always loves.
Oh yeah, I mean, hell, that's used in so many video games I have lost track of.
Yeah.
And I have seen it so many times at this point. I feel like I've walked through it a couple times. I'm just at that point. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. I really like the way when they do kind of break down certain definitions, that they do have the words kind of hover between the person's face or around the blank area around their head, so that way it's them giving you the definition and not like some faceless person behind the camera. It does a fantastic job of that, using
the visual, like you said, kind of the gutters in like a comic book for information. Both they have these definitions like you're talking about, and they also have in like the side on the right, kind of like you're reading actual Japanese, which is right to left, top to bottom.
Yep.
It does the dialogue of what they're saying in hiragana, katakana, and kanji, so you can read along if you know that. And I have been studying that for a while, but I am so bad at reading, and especially if it's like fast, I'm like, forget it. But you catch a word or two, you're like, oh, I know that. Anyway, and then it's mostly in Japanese. They do translate it. They have subtitles. There were like surprisingly a couple interviews. I think that photographer Leslie Key, who's actually I think from Singapore, and then moved to Japan. He talks in English, and it was like, whoa, what am I watching? What happened? And he was involved in this project called Out in Japan, and it was a project to capture 1,000 queer Japanese individuals for photography for like an installation piece.
That almost got me. Like, there are not a lot of things that can push me to willingly admit that I have emotions, but that whole project was absolutely beautiful.
Did you catch Junko Mitsuhashi? She was the little bit older trans woman who was a professor.
Yep.
So interesting about her. She's a writer, professor, teaches about sexuality and culture in Japan. She was instrumental in fighting a bar, one of the parties that they featured, the Gold, was it Gold Bar? Which was a women's only party promoted by, what's her name? Chiga Ogawa. And the party was meant for women only. So a trans woman showed up and was a friend of the DJs. And there was a whole big kerfuffle because they wouldn't let her in. And so this professor was instrumental in challenging the promoter. And also that promoter was interviewed in this documentary. They were both interviewed. But the documentary kind of skirts around the controversy a bit. But the good news is everybody got, on the same page. Everybody worked through their issues. That promoter ultimately, even though they for a while added like cisgender only, they eventually took that away. And now the Gold Bar parties are women, regardless of if you're cisgender or trans or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something and the bar's called Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, sorry.
But no, that was one of the things when I did get the information you sent me on the whole thing. That's something it's not something that happens super often here, but like we were because there's some events and groups and stuff that started to kind of lean in that direction, but then the night of the event they're just like, no, all men, no matter what, like, are invited. And so
bathhouses are a problem right now in the United States, because if you're a trans man and you go to a bathhouse, it's I mean, and no, some bathhouses are whatever, doesn't matter, but most of them cater to gay men, right?
Yeah.
But there are bathhouses that absolutely have stated policies where they're like, no, we don't allow trans men. It's only cisgender men. And most, I think, are more now like, who, we don't care, whatever. And a lot of them, like, they want business. They'll even have let women in. I mean, because whatever. But no, it's not just unique to Japan. But what I do like is that community is still so small and interconnected that they worked through their shit, they figured it out, and now Chiga at her event, Goldfinger, it's all women, and she's partnered with trans men promoters to do trans men events.
Yep.
Then they feature some of that. The fact that there was a trans men event and that there were dancers, like go-go dancers, and they were I was like, you don't see that here.
No,
even in the
you
United
don't
States. I mean,
at all.
I'm sure there have been, but it's not common. So that was cool. I do want to talk, well, while we're talking about that issue, I actually have another clip I want to show. Not about that party, but a different individual who works on this it's kind of like a community center called Colorful Station, Fumino Sugiyama. And they did a great job in the documentary of talking about their business, but also we talked about earlier, the gender reassignment or gender affirming change policy that they have. So I want to play a little quick clip of that. Introduce him. Make sure I got all my settings. So this is in the Shibuya area, which is kind of close to
ここはですね、渋谷区の神宮前にあるカラフルステーションっていう、場所の今2階にちょうどいます。で1階が彩りというレストランで、2階がギャラリースペースみたいに運営しようということでやっていて、その建物1棟を、カラフルステーションと呼んでるんですけれども、もともとは LGBT センターみたいなのを作りたいなっていう思いから始めました。杉山文乃です。34歳です。僕はトランスジェンダーのトランスマンだと思ってるんですけど、自分の肩書きを言うのは結構大変で、というのも何か一言で表せるわけじゃないんですけど、実際は飲食店の経営をしながら、LGBT に関する、啓発活動みたいなのをしてるんですね。この白
So I'll stop there. What was interesting is those pictures that were on the wall, I believe, are from the Out in Japan project.
Yeah.
And the other thing is he was at the Tokyo Pride. Tokyo Pride is just like all the prides in the United States. Like, they have become incredibly commercialized.
I gotta say, I love the kind of militant group that was there that was just like, no, fuck being nice, like fuck commercialism. And I was like, who are you? And like, because I get it, I get where they're coming from, where it's this kind of like, where were you assholes at, when we were really struggling, and what is your goodie bag really going to help us with? Well, but it was hilarious kind of seeing that, because I was like, this is Lake Eola. This is Atlanta Pride. I was
sponsored by Google, Netflix. Now, so here's the thing, and there's another person they interview, and I didn't capture their name. They make a good point. You need corporate sponsorships. Like, you're just gonna need that, right? That's to pay for this, to make it not just donation driven, to have any visibility. You're gonna need corporate sponsorships. But at the same time, it needs to not turn into, Lake Eola is not the most egregious, though. Vegas is a good pride that they basically turned it into an event where you like have to pay to get in, and the organizers explicitly said, look, we're charging for people to get in because if we don't, we'll have homeless people showing up. And that was like a whole like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Your event is outdoors. You know that there are queer homeless people, a disproportionate of which you probably would like to help. And it was a very weird, very Vegas kind of mentality about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all I'm saying is Tokyo is just like the rest of the.
It's funny because when I was in college and I listened to a lot of Japanese music and everything, a lot of the rock bands sounded like they were from the 90s, but like I'm living in 2012, like, and it was just one of those ideas that, again, I'm a dumb American, so I keep thinking like, oh, it's not going to be like our stuff, but then I'm like, oh, it really is like our stuff, which is a nice, which actually is a very nice. It was a very nice feeling to feel like you're on the same page as people in a completely different hemisphere.
Yeah, well, and when I was over there in Japan, and I got to meet some people. Okay, so I do want to say this because this will allow me to tie this in. The documentary does a great job. I thought it only focused on Tokyo because I only watched the first half. It does go to other places. We talked about Osaka, Kyoto, Okinawa. But what I don't think it did enough, and if this is my only, I guess, criticism, is it really didn't get anywhere outside of those areas to explore like queer Japan life in the smaller communities. And that's hard. That's really hard. And I understand why it would be something you wouldn't really be able to do. But I had a really great queer bar experience. I had two, actually. I had one in Sasebo, which is a little, that's not even little. It's a fairly large city down in Kyushu. And it's Cindy's Getaway. I'm going to name check it because it's a great bar. I met Cindy. I got to hang out with Cindy and drink with her. Cindy is fantastic. She's this lovely lesbian who has just a fabulous little they're tiny bars. A lot of bars in Japan are small.
Yeah.
But it catered to the military, the Navy there, U.S. Navy, catered to locals to some extent, like they would have different nights. But great queer community. They do Pride every year. Great. Then I went to a small bear bar in Yokohama. And Yokohama is like not far from Tokyo. So it's a big city, but it's like near that area. It's, and so that was a great experience. And I forgot the name of the bar. I'm kind of bummed I didn't look it up somehow, but great little bear bar. Again, tiny. There were two of us and the bartender, and it was like 3/4 full. Like you could have fit a few more people in there, right?
Yeah.
But just great little stories like that. And to do it justice, you're going to need more than an hour and change. An hour and a half is what this thing ran. You're going to need like a series. But there are just so many stories. There are just so many little bars and communities that have these queer spaces. Fukuoka is a big city in Kyushu. It's actually one of the biggest cities in Japan that no one ever hears about outside of Japan, right? And they have like a ton of gay bars there. I didn't get to go to any of them when I was there, but it's like high up on my list, when I go back. So anyway, I guess all I'm saying is, the documentary does as much as it can to highlight a lot of different communities within the time constraints, and obviously, again, focusing on Tokyo because that's where so many are.
Yeah.
I forgot. I totally went off the rails on that. I know there was something I was transitioning from what you were saying. I apologize, but
no, that's fine. No, and just when I remember watching it, and I was talking to Brian about this before we started the live stream, that there was like a couple of terms that flashed up there, like hentai is strange, weird, kinky, pervert, but then okama popped up.
So you'd heard of that term before?
So I am a big One Piece watcher, and One Piece has probably some of the most diverse characters ever, and of any animated series. And you do have transgendered characters and queer characters. I'm not particularly super on board with how they're depicted physically. But one of the characters sings a song called "Oh Come My Way," "Oh Come Away," and he's in prison singing this song. Well, and he dresses like a ballerina, but he's physically like super strong and one of the main character's best friends. And that's one of the big deals is he'll always say, he'll be like, queers never say goodbye. Like, he'll make little remarks like that. And I remember hearing him sing the song and I'm like, okay, that's a little catchy. I'm not going to lie. Like, oh, come away. I'm like, I'm kind of on board. But then when I saw that it was also kind of a slur, I was like, oh, see, what are you doing to me now? Like, yeah, what are you doing to me?
It's a fine line, and you'll see this in they're used to drag actually in their culture in Japan. They'll have drag commentators because if you never watch Japanese TV outside of anime, a lot of it's reality TV. Mm-hmm. Almost all of it has, even the news has reaction videos. So in real time, you're watching something that they're watching and you're seeing their reaction, and it's a thing. It is like everywhere. You could not escape it. Yeah. There's a great video that I'll have to remember to share from Chris Broad abroad in Japan, and it's his impression as a British resident of Japan of Japanese TV and how bad it is. It's pretty great. It distills it down into the perfect thing. But yeah, it's an interesting culture, and it's a fine line because you don't know if they're laughing at the queen or if they're laughing with the queen. You don't know if they're if in the One Piece if they're trying to show a real sort of gay archetype sort of thing, or are they like kind of using that as a way to make fun? It's and that was one of the things where it was one of those moments where I'm like, I'm very glad I don't use this phrasing out loud around other people now. Like, I'm glad it's just something I noticed while watching, and it was just one of those things where the documentary does such a good job of just giving you the information and not really like over explaining it. They're just like, Okama, not such a nice word. It's like, okay. I had not seen it before, and I was looking up some of the kanji related to it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, it's a wash pot." I mean, it's the same kanji for a wash pot, and it can also then mean a man's ass, and then of course you can imagine from that, it's the derogatory queer gay man slang. I also loved catching some of like the FTM trans man or trans women. The way the kanji reads, it made just so much sense. Yeah. Though it's very much directly like MTF or FTM, which aren't the best terms. I think people are realizing because it's a little inaccurate, a little way of. But yeah, anyway, long story short, it's like what was it? Dansei kara josei would be MTF, and then reverse that josei kara dansei is female to male. Yeah. So anyway, as a student of the language and learning lots of kanji these days, like that was cool to see how that all lined. Anyway, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. So yeah, I think we've there's so many more stories too. I mean,
there's ton. We just kind of said our favorites and then kind of, but this one I'm surprised you didn't bring up. Her name was Simone Fukuyuki. She's a drag queen, and she decided to put behind her these Japanese men, scantily clad, totally jerking each other off at one point. I remember I did 2 watches, and the first watch, I know I noticed it, but I think I was eating or I was literally doing something else that like snatches my attention away. So I think I was getting food. Like I think I paused.
It's easy to overlook if you're doing other things. Yeah.
Got food, came back, sat down, and then I hit play. And I think it was a burrito. I'm not even gonna lie. I think I definitely went to Taco Bell. And then when I did the second watch through earlier today, I was like, Like,
yeah, they're totally jerking each other off. That's what that is.
What you doing, bro?
No, and it's hot.
So,
but like,
I mean, no, I was like,
for a documentary to have that behind, and again, I don't know who the target audience is for this. Like we've said, it gets a little adult in certain respects. You know, in that it's talks about sexuality.
Simone knew what she was doing.
But yeah, that scene was like, oh, I mean, and it's so funny because I'm like wondering if was the drag queen's idea. I'm assuming it was their idea, not the director. Like, hey, can we get 4 guys behind you and maybe just start kind of teasing each other? You know, maybe play with, and then just reach your hand in and start jerking.
Let's be clear. They were also blindfolded.
Oh, and blindfolded. That's true. That's true. So I love that. I do appreciate anything like not off the cuff, but off the kilter. You know, like just random and like in this case. Sexy, but just like why? But I don't care. Kind of like the pig thing from earlier. As well. But yeah, so I really think we've talked a lot. There's so much more. It's an hour and a half of just great Japanese culture. If you like that, you may also be interested in Massive, like we talked about from Fantagraphics. Still available. I actually just bought my copy on the Kindle. Platform. I'm very excited. I also will do a quick little plug for myself. I do a Japanese language learning stream on my Twitch stream and Facebook sometimes. Actually, I've been doing it more on Facebook. So we teach kanji and we teach hiragana and katakana occasionally, doing lessons and playing these RPGs where you actually get to practice that. So if you are interested in learning Japanese, you know, Curling Bear on Twitch is my stream. You know, come check out when we do it. We do it a couple times a week.
It's super nerdy.
It's very nerdy because I'm playing an RPG. So I'm Twitch streaming a video game and I'm talking about Japanese culture, but I do talk a lot about like my experiences there and what I know of the culture. And, you know, we get people in the chat who can add to that. It's actually been a lot of fun.
Oh, and also my brother's husband, volumes 1 and 2 are out as well.
Gengoroh Tagame.
Yep.
I can't wait for him to come back to the States and, hopefully I'm gonna try to get him to interview at some point. Like I feel like
that would be awesome.
There's enough connections that we might be able to make that happen. But I do want to thank the marketing team behind Queer Japan for allowing us to do the stream.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you guys will go to queerjapan.com and check it out yourself. You know, if in the future we can get some of the folks behind it on, I think that'd be another great thing to discuss. But yeah, and if you like what you're hearing here, you can go to flameonshow.com. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube channel. That might be where you're watching us. We are putting these episode like content, like the video streams out on Mondays with different interviews that I'm doing. And we have our podcast that comes out every other Friday. Excuse me. Every other Friday when we talk pop culture with BJ, Pat, Eric, Josh, random other people who decide to pop on. And we just started a Discord. So if you're interested in Discord, you know, message the page and we'll give you the secret key. It's been a lot of fun to get people in the community kind of talking about cool stuff. So I don't know. Do you have anything else, BJ? Anything you want to promote?
What else? I do know at some point we are supposed to get a survey out and about. I know Pat's, I kind of did the rough draft and Pat is currently working on the final draft. So we will have a survey out to you guys who love us and listen to us. So that way we can get some information to better flame on for you.
Flamer.
better flamer honor. I'll come up with something better hopefully before the new year.
I know that project is definitely aimed at trying to find out like what kind of content you guys might be interested in. And obviously when that survey comes out, we really hope you guys do it. But we also want to hear from you. So if you like this, please just put a comment on the video, like and subscribe on our YouTube. Give me some love on the Twitch side.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, his Twitter and Instagram are right there too.
Yeah, I was saying you can always flame me directly here. But no, we do want to help like the community and try to get more. I'm going to keep working on getting some great guests. Actually, Monday we're going to have Terry Bloss another Latinx queer comic creator who we love. I love his work, and yeah, we're gonna be talking to him on Monday, pretty much the same time, like 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. So yeah, come back and check that out. And other than that, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone.
And also I want to leave you guys with a quote by Vivienne Sato from the documentary. I want to be the noise. And I love it.
That's very you, BJ.
It's very, of course. You will not ignore me.
Never. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Bye.